Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining me is Aaron William Freeland. Hey, Aaron, how you doing?
Good, Frank. How are you?
I can't complain. What's the point anyway? We're not allowed to complain anyway. So um, it's always answered the same way. Well, I got to tell you, I haven't been feeling well. I know that we don't have the same issue they have in New York. If I can just jump into this issue, Nova Scotia is burning up, and it's dropping a cloud over New York, New Jersey. The eastern seaboard now has smoke from the fires that are happening in Nova Scotia. There are a lot of people that are being told to stay inside. The air is not toxic per se, but if you have issues, it's best that you don't go outside. And for those who don't have issues, you still end up with soreness in your eyes. Your eyes start to feel like they're going to explode. It's not pleasant at all. We talk about the environment once in a while, and now the environment in the U.S. is don't look up.
Yeah, and the thing is that's continuing across Canada as well. There are currently 240 odd active fires in Ontario as well, which is contributing to the fantastic orange and beige colors that we're seeing in the skies. Um, I wouldn't normally have too much of an issue with this sort of thing because I'm always a fan of a good fire, but when a provincial government in their first year in office manages to cut $142 million out of an emergency firefighting budget for the Ministry of Natural Resources, that's a cut of 67%, by the way, uh, under the auspices of austerity. I have a bit of an issue with that. Um, Canadian forces have actually been called to help deal with some of the hotspots, and we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3,500 acres that's currently on fire in Ontario. So
Everything I
make of
got
that
out of
what you
that
will.
was, all I got out of what you just said right now is that you're showing off that you know math.
Well, I know that taking money out of essential services like police, fire, and
I'm
EMS
not
is
laughing about the
probably not
fires. I'm not laughing about the fires. What I'm laughing about is, if nobody's seen the movie Don't Look Up, it's a perfect descriptor for the problem with, changing our future. Because essentially that's all we're talking about here. I'm not here trying to promote, one way or the other or demote one or the other. But what I will say is that if the very least what we could do is try to search for the truth, try to discover some facts. And also, the most important thing, if one doesn't have an open enough mind to mitigate, in other words, curb or slow down things that are bad, and I think you just highlighted a very important one. If we cannot, if we cannot accept that fires happen because the environment is getting warmer and warmer, okay, fine. You got to at least understand that if there are fires more often, I agree with you 100%. The provincial government was very short-sighted in doing that. At the end of the day, this is something that they're going to talk about in America with Canada, because now the fact that we didn't put out those fires in Nova Scotia or don't put them out in Ontario, they affect our neighbors, not just the ones that live next door, the ones that live on the other side of the border. We as a world community. And that's why the environment matters. Just because we think we don't have to do anything doesn't mean it isn't impactful on anyone else. And if we don't promote taking care of it, we are not, just because we take care of what we're doing, we don't put pressure on other people, doesn't mean that it's not going to affect us. I think this is a perfect example of that.
This reminds me of the case where a DC senator brought a snowball onto the House floor to prove that global warming wasn't real because it was snowing where he was. You know, it's one of those situations where it's like, give your head a shake, bud. Uh, we're looking at smoke that's blowing in from Mistassini, Matagami, and Val d'Or. It's caused evacuations in Quebec. It's sweeping across Ottawa through Bancroft, Kingston, and Cobourg before crossing the lake. Right.
Right.
This is the situation we're at here. Here, luckily, Toronto, Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, Grimsby, Hamilton, Stony Creek, all on the outside of that, so it's not as bad. But that area right through the middle of Lake Ontario there is just not a safe place to be and not a
Yeah.
fun place
And
to be
moving
right
south.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue with some news, and we'll talk about the feds. They're looking at options in as far as disaster response agency, and we're talking about wildfire range. You talked about Ontario. Federally speaking, where are they at?
Well, there are actually more than 400 fires, sorry, currently burning across Canada. So we're actually looking at 40,000 square kilometers across Canada right now, and this is our fourth worst fire season on record before summer has officially begun. So before we get out of the starting blocks on this, it's already bad. Um, so Emergency Preparedness Minister Bill Blair has said that they are working on something, but they are kind of hamstrung because, again, there's the separation of federal and provincial powers, and most of dealing with the wildfires happens to be more provincial than it is federal. So they are kind of, limited in that regard. Um, you know, uh, FEMA leads the U.S. government's programs when it comes to emergency preparedness and recovery from natural disasters, terrorist attacks, and other major incidents. Unfortunately, we don't have something really similar to that in Canada, which kind of leaves us a little bit short when it comes to things like this. There are more than 500 soldiers and military specialists currently deployed in Alberta, Quebec, and Nova Scotia to help deal with these wildfires. Along with water bomber and other aircraft, but again, it's actually straining the military's overall capacity to have soldiers out there on the front lines fighting fires, and they're not trained for it. So it's an additional
In,
consideration.
in the prairies, there's the end of the stormy weather in sight, and humidity continues. What else is happening in the prairies weather-wise?
Well, this is what we call an omega blocking pattern. And this is going to keep the prairies locked in its current state of scorching heat and stifling humidity. It's a combination. It's in combination, sorry, with a boundary that's still sitting over a region. It's a hot, humid air mass that could actually trigger severe thunderstorms. And with the triggering of severe thunderstorms across the prairies is lightning strikes. Lightning can cause fires. Therefore, we're looking at a case where it could be even potentially worse. And it's a swirling high pressure system that's settled in over the prairies right now that is causing this omega block phenomenon. Um, but it's at this point, it's not really going to get that much better. Atmospheric moisture is already relatively low across most of Alberta and Saskatchewan. This could lead to fires that could impact Canada's wheat and grain crops as well. So it's something we need to be acutely aware of.
Absolutely. Well, we talked about Nova Scotia. You talked about Ontario, and you went west. What about Quebec? Wildfires there are becoming a pretty substantial issue.
Yeah, the Northern Creek community of Mistassini, located about 550 kilometers northeast of Montreal, uh, is going to be evacuated most likely later tonight, early tomorrow morning. It's going to displace about 4,000 people. Chief Michael Petawabano said his community currently remains safe, but has asked residents to await instructions from Creek band officials. Um, Chappé, Quebec is at risk of being evacuated again, and some parts of Santerre, Quebec were also threatened by the flames. The issue that we're having today is we're looking at a fire that's actually also headed towards Roberval, which is threatening another 7,500 people. Uh, the Société de protection des forêts contre le feu, that's Quebec's forest fire prevention agency, said more than 150 fires are currently burning, and 100 of them are considered out of control. That's 457,000 hectares that have burned so far this season. That's the most since the province has ever started keeping records in the past 50 years. So, it's a
Wow.
tinderbox. Don't light fires if you don't have to. Don't light fires to dispose of construction materials if you don't have to. If you're up at the cottage, don't have a weenie roast. Just be careful, be sane.
I'm working on interlock around my fire pit. Please don't talk to me that way.
Well, if you've cleared back the forest canopy over
We're
top of
we're at
your proposed
medium
fire
here.
area
We're
by
at
at least,
medium here.
oh well, that's okay then.
We're
You
at
should be
medium
okay.
here. But that's not to say I'm gonna start a fire.
Well,
That's
I
not
mean,
saying
if you're at medium, you can. You just have to be careful about it.
you always have to be careful. In reality, you always have to be careful. All right, Aaron, here's a concern I have. This here in Ontario, there's talk that 7-Eleven is going to what? Sell wine? Glasses of wine?
Yes.
Please
To
don't go the
Ontario.
Slurpee route. Could you imagine?
Can you imagine alcohol
You know
slushy?
those jugs they have the Slurpee.
Just,
Here's your wine.
can you
Have
imagine
one
that?
for
Can
the
you imagine
road.
that? A
Here's one
big
for the
gulp,
road.
a big gulp sangria slushy,
Yeah,
Frank.
it's just,
32 ounces of frozen sangria. I believe they
don't
call that a margarita.
don't pull in, do not drive. We're not promoting that in any way. But if
No.
you're a passenger, I'm dying to see if you make it home awake.
Well, this is part of Doug Ford desperately trying to keep one of his election promises, which is, beer and wine in convenience stores. So as it currently stands, two Ontario 7-Eleven locations are now actively serving beer and wine in store, and there are 50 other locations in the province that have been approved for restaurant liquor licenses, but haven't actually set themselves up as one yet.
I don't understand it. I mean, listen, I like a drink. I drink wine. I drink beer. Um, it doesn't have to be everywhere. I don't understand it. It doesn't have to be everywhere. I just
No,
don't get it. I just don't get it. I guess, one of the things that I would expect that someone who wants to drink should at least have the ability to have patience about having it. I don't know if I'm making any sense here with what I'm saying. If it's too accessible, then if it's accessible everywhere, then in my opinion, it's too accessible. I'm sorry, I'm making myself the news here. I just don't think alcohol is something you know, um, that should be as available as it sounds like the province wants to do it. I don't know that a 7-Eleven where people pull in with cars selling glasses of wine. God, I hope not. Just doesn't. It's counterintuitive in my mind. Sorry, I
no, no,
digressed.
no. I understand where you're coming from perfectly on something like this. The 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 temptation to enjoy and imbibe alcool au volant, the Quebecers say. Drinking and driving. The temptation when you can just pull into a 7-Eleven, pick up a couple bags of chips, pick up your roller dog, and grab a beer while you're on your way to the baseball game is just too tempting.
Yeah,
There
it's
is a
just.
time and there is a place for these sorts of things to be enjoyed.
I'm not a
Um,
teetotaler. I'm
no,
not a
I mean none of
teetotaler.
us are. As much as we might like to say that we are or pretend that we are, none of us are teetotalers.
Wow, that's just it's just it. Well, anyway, and it offers another opportunity for the secure selling of the product to people who, shall we say, have the right to drink. You
Yeah,
know, that's another concern that I have because I'm not. You're basically legislating. As we know about alcohol. One of the biggest problems with alcohol is that there has to be a point where the person who sells it has to make, and this is not by law. There's no law that says it, but there is a legal system that will hold you accountable for giving people a drink who are already drunk, and it could cost your establishment their license, and the individual could be sued for whatever may happen after that person leaves. My point is very simple. You can't. You're asking a 7-Eleven now to make a determination as who should get alcohol and how much should they get.
and this is actually technically speaking another barrier to employment. Because those individuals would need to be smart serve certified. That has to be redone every year.
Right.
And this is an additional stumbling block that the provincial government is putting in the way of individuals who are potentially seeking employment at places like that. Having a 17-year-old have to have their smart serve card cut off a belligerent adult at a 7-Eleven at 11:30 at night
I
when they
can't
want a
sell
beer
you it.
is a
You're drunk.
recipe for disaster. It's a
I
recipe for
can't.
disaster. It quite frankly
Absolutely.
is.
That's that's
So,
that's my point, is that it opens a window, a giant window to problems. And do we need to have alcohol accessible everywhere? Do we need to sell cigarettes everywhere? Well, apparently we sell them in certain places and we're not allowed to display them. Why is that? Why have we decided as a society, and our government has done it without us, most people, complaining about it, is because it sadly makes sense. And it's just like when you talked about a person being licensed to serve. I understand there's a lot of people and a lot of groups, and even political governments, including political parties, that think that too much regulation is bad. But there's a reason why you have to be certified to serve alcohol. There's a reason for it. Not so much only the fact that you have a license to serve. It can be taken away from you if you're irresponsible with that right, that opportunity. So
mhm.
it's a level of protection where people who have to get the license show that they're incapable of enforcing the rules, so they don't get renewed. There's a reason for that. It's just crazy. Again, I'm not a teetotaler. I'm not one of those people. I enjoy having under a controlled environment, having a drink with friends, and always have a designated driver. Well, who's the designated driver that pulls into a 7-Eleven by themselves? I'm just, I'm just, I'm just spitballing, guys. I don't believe a word I say. Don't agree with me. It's all fine. And if you have any views on it, you can send it to Aaron and I. We're more than willing to listen, and have it affect our opinion, because nobody's opinion is always 100%, 100% of the time, and forever. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. 7-Eleven Slurpees are going to go through a change. Understood.
Like I said, I can see myself having a beer Rita from 7-Eleven as long as I'm walking home afterwards. So,
Absolutely. Well, okay, let's talk about Nova Scotia, and they estimate 100,000 people will be affected by online security breach. Here we go with the internet is not safe sometimes.
well, and this was an issue that we touched on last week as well. This was one of the last minute things that we actually managed to talk about. Nova Scotia's Minister of Cybersecurity has finally come out, and he has indicated that they estimate about 100,000 people have had personal information stolen as a result of a privacy breach, sorry, in a third-party file transfer system which is used by the province. Colton Leblanc said the government investigation indicated that social insurance numbers, addresses, and banking information of current employees of the public service, including Nova Scotia Health and the IWK Hospital, were taken. Some information may also have been stolen from former public service employees. The file transfer system that they were using is called Move It. That's MOVE, all in caps, lower IT, which the province uses to transfer employee payroll information. Now, the exact number of people affected could be higher or lower. It depends on what the investigation uncovers, but the province is working as quickly as it can to contact those affected and will be offering them credit monitoring services. Although Leblanc is also urging people to look for suspicious transactions and to contact their banks.
Moving over to PEI, with services stretched, PEI government putting final touches on new population strategy.
So, there's been a bit of a population boom, and their PEI is currently in the process of trying to manage population growth and the effects it has on healthcare and housing. This is from Jen Redmond, the MLA from Mermaid Stratford. Uh, she is the Minister of Workforce, Advanced Learning, and Population. Um, she was responding to questions from Green Party leader Peter Bevan Baker. The province actually grew 4.3% in 2022, adding more than 7,000 residents. Most of that is people from the east fleeing out to the east coast during COVID.
The COVID
Uh,
experience of working from home. Move out
exactly.
of a home that's worth $1 million to a home that's $250,000.
But because you sold that $1 million home, you don't have to worry about paying for anything anymore because that is all taken care of,
Well,
right?
considering you probably only had $150,000 in the house, so now your mortgage goes from $850,000 to 100,000. That's the reality of moving, and
Yeah.
not everybody has the money that uh, to keep up with a mortgage.
No,
That's
this
what I
is
believe.
true. Now, there are many factors that are contributing to issues such as ER overcapacity and PEI right now. One of the underlying causes is a system that hasn't adapted to the rapidly growing population. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot. They only added 7,000 residents. That's, one condo tower in downtown Toronto. But the total population of the island is now 173,954 people. That 4% is a lot bigger than you'd think it would be. They are, again, like I mentioned, they are trying to put final touches on a population strategy right now. 93% of the immigrants that moved there are in the workforce, and more are needed to address a still ongoing labor shortage. The problem is that they're not getting some of the people that they actually need in there to help them with their plan, more specifically doctors, nurses, emergency services, that sort of thing. A lot of it is remote workers that move there. That whole, oh, I bought a house for $1. I have to promise to put $250,000 into it and build something in 2 years.
Hmm.
We'll do it. It's COVID. I'll build it myself, sort of thing.
Yeah, because I
Uh,
got the time. Doesn't matter whether I know how to do it or not.
exactly. There are enough websites and tutorials out there that I can actually do it.
Yeah. All right. All right. Let's go over to entertainment. And in Toronto, where entertainment is king in Canada, as well as BC, Quebec, a lot of different places. But in particular, there's a story coming out of Toronto. There's a Law and Order spinoff being shot here in Toronto,
Yeah,
next to you, below me.
it's actually called Law and Order Toronto: Criminal Intent. Um, Toronto's actually going to be getting their own version of it. It's going to be a 10-hour order, 1 hour episodes, and everything's going to be produced and shot in Toronto. It's going to be a psychological thriller wrapped in a criminal investigation. Um, Basically, we're looking at original Canadian stories written, produced by, and starring Canadians, and will follow an elite squad of detectives who investigate high profile crime and corruption in Metro Toronto. I will be anxious to see if they actually address poison dog treats in the park. That would be one of them. I would hope that they would look into, oh, I don't know, a bunch of green belt developers getting lofty and good positions for attending a wedding. Not to mention the decision to have the number of Toronto city councillors. And I think a real big missed opportunity, and this is mentioned in the article as well, um, is if they'll name the main investigators Bob and Doug, and if there will be a brewery at the St. Clair water treatment plant, and if somehow the theme song will manage to work in the TTC chimes. Those are all huge, awesome opportunities for them. Just some free ideas. Now, obviously, nothing is happening right now
I
because of the
definitely wouldn't
writer's
pay
strike.
for those ideas. That's for sure.
Oh no, it's all for free on the interwebs, anyways. But there's nothing going on right now currently because of the writer's strike. So once that gets resolved, hopefully we'll be able to see that take off.
Okay, let's move over to sports. And I think the biggest story of the day is do we call it a betrayal? Does the betrayal live on? I mean, it obvious this isn't a PGA story. Oh, yes, it is.
So, for those of you who followed the channel, last year we did a story about the Saudi Arabian group LIV Golf that decided that they were going to open up and steal money away and steal players away from the PGA Tour. It has gotten to the point now where the PGA, Live Golf, and an investment group, the Saudi Public Investment Fund, have agreed to join forces for to form a new golf league. Apparently, the PGA decided they didn't enjoy the fact that they were getting pantsed by Live. Um, so
And there were legal issues. There was court
yeah,
time.
yeah, it's one of those really messy situations where a whole bunch of players who stayed loyal to the PGA Tour aren't necessarily going to get rewarded for their loyalty, and individuals who jumped ship for the Saudi Arabian group
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
I can only think that this merger would just be bad. for
Tiger
everybody
Woods
concerned.
turned down 800 grand because of 9/11, because of his father was a lifelong member of the Army in the US. There are a lot of people, especially the victims and their well, not the victims, but the victims' families of 9/11, that were totally taken aback and hurt by golfers joining. You know, the word is that you know the country where they had a lot to do with 9/11, and the connections there and the pain. You know, it's something that's terrible. It truly is terrible.
And the justifications and explanations that we're getting from Jay Adamson and other members within the PGA as to why they decided to join with this particular organization hasn't been satisfactory. They've been getting raked over the coals, and as far as I'm concerned, it's well deserved.
I heard today that it might have been worth billions. That decision was made, and somebody's pockets were lined in the billions.
It really doesn't surprise me. I mean, this is the same country that has harbored the murderers of Jamal Khashoggi. This is the same countless atrocities.
Yeah,
And
the prince was given credit for putting the order out and killing Khashoggi.
so, you know, I mean, McElroy is by nature an optimist. Let's be fair here. But even the most eloquent defenders are struggling to rationalize Tuesday's events as anything more than a money grab. Loyalty be damned, and
Well,
that's pretty
if
pretty much what it
that's
boils down to.
if that's the case, Aaron, they should have said, sure, give us whatever. And those golfers that were loyal to the PGA, loyal to the feelings of the victims' families, loyal to the idea that this group that owns live are questionable at best. They should have made sure that they were. I know this sounds silly. Money doesn't solve everything, but at least have this story end where the sacrifice is not a punishment. You know what I mean? Like that's what
Yeah,
this. If I was one of the, if I was McElroy, if I was Tiger Woods, I would feel like I was being punished because I did the right thing. And we can't allow that kind of stuff to happen. We cannot punish people who try doing the right thing, and then the people who don't benefit. It's the upside down world that we live in today, unfortunately. It's the transactional world that we live in. Bonnie and Clyde are heroes. They were heroes back in the day. They would be even bigger heroes today.
yeah. I think the other issue that we have here is the the Saudi Public Investment Fund already did a lot of things with the PGA Tour as it was already, and that in and of itself, was problematic. I think a lot of golfers resigned themselves to the fact that the Public Investment Fund was always going to be there.
This was going to happen.
Um,
It was an
yeah,
inevitability. It's
it was
true.
a
It
matter of
wasn't
time,
inevitable
really. So
because money makes sports go around. What sport isn't searching for new money streams? Show me a sport, Aaron, that's satisfied with the money they make.
none of them are.
And the other thing is there, and I air quotes, they're nonprofits. The NFL's a nonprofit. The NHL's a nonprofit. The NBA's a nonprofit. By nonprofit, I mean they um, they don't really make the money. The NBA doesn't make the money. The owners make the money. And then they have employees within the NBA. And the same thing's true for the NHL. The same thing is true for the NFL. So, it's all about money. We all know that the NBA is great friends with China. And whenever something happens where China's called into question, the NBA goes, well, we'll just pretend we're not here. Don't look at us. Nothing to see here. But that's the way it is. Money makes the world go round, Aaron. It's a sad thing. It just would be nice if the people who stand up for their beliefs don't get skewered because they do. It makes it harder for people to stand up for their beliefs if there's punishment to come. Feeling good about yourself. Let's go over to soccer. So Lionel Messi is choosing Miami. What? Inter Miami? What?
Yeah, this is huge news for Major League Soccer. After days and days and years of pursuit, MLS and Miami finally won a three-horse race with Barca and Saudi Arabia to sign Lionel Messi. It's a 2.5 year deal with a total value worth over $100 million. Like
Wow.
this is almost, for me at least, because I'm not nearly as much of a fan of Messi as I was of Beckham. This is almost as big as Beckham signing with the LA Galaxy. Right? This is absolutely massive and lends a huge amount of legitimacy to this upstart North American league that is actually trying to challenge the Premier League and Euro and all that sort of thing. Now, the deal is purportedly going to include commercial arrangements with Apple and Adidas. Those are two key MLS partners for cuts of the broadcast and merchandise revenue that the Argentine superstar is going to generate. It's also going to give Messi an option to purchase a minority stake in Inter Miami after he has finished playing.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Now remember,
it's
Lionel Messi is the great soccer player of our time that didn't win a championship, a World Cup championship. Guess what he accomplished? And now he doesn't have to worry about that. Now he can cash in.
yep, literally. This is a huge coup for Inter Miami.
And
So,
he can raise the profile of who he is. His greatness is clear. One of the greatest soccer players of all time. He had one little jewel missing from his crown, and he took care of that. And now he can become like Pele before him. And you talked about Beckham and other great soccer players that have come to North America to raise the profile of the game, and that's a great thing. As far as I'm concerned, I applaud him coming here, and I'm not going to question how much they're spending because once they get over 50 grand, I can't understand beyond that. So
no,
yeah,
as far as
hundreds of
I'm
millions.
concerned,
I can't wrap my
yeah.
head around $100 million. I don't know
No,
if
the
you
number
can,
is
but
just too big for me to comprehend.
I, I wouldn't even know what to do with it. Buy a
Neither
hundred
would
million
I.
dollar
So,
boat.
I mean, obviously he's got enough ideas.
Yeah.
He's got funds set aside and investments in the Argentine National Soccer Training Center. He's got a whole bunch of property in Miami, anyways. So I think it seems to me to be a natural progression for him. Now,
Absolutely.
it's interesting that he chose Inter Miami because they're currently sitting in last place in the Eastern Conference after they fired Phil Neville. There have also been reports linking Gerardo Tata Martino, that's Messi's former national coach, with the coaching vacancy in Inter Miami, sorry, so that could make things even more interesting.
Are we suggesting the bar is really low for him to improve that team?
I think that there is a prime opportunity here for Messi to elevate himself to
Failure is
even
not
more
part of
godhead status.
failure is not part of the equation, I don't think. That'll be very interesting. When we talk about sports, we talk about hundreds of $1 million to players, and here's a sport in the U.S., the biggest sport in the U.S., the NFL. The Buffalo Bills in a stadium where they're going to play what 20 games? No, what am I talking about? Maybe 12 games a year in a stadium. They're going to play 12 games a year. They've just broke ground on $1.54 billion worth of stadium.
It's going to be a 60,000 plus seat stadium. The taxpayers of Buffalo, New York are going to be picking up $850 million of the price tag for that. Pagula said, "Hey, Ralph, we're moving across the street." And he was there with NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell and New York Governor Kathy Hochul to dig in the first spadeful of dirt to ceremonially kick it off. The groundbreaking. There we go. Now, I mean, it's going to be replacing a stadium that is currently 50 years old.
Mhm.
And Highmark Stadium, which opened in '73, has actually been deemed too expensive to renovate. Now, the new stadium will carry over the naming rights after the Bills announce a long-term deal with Highmark, um, and we'll have to see where it goes from here. It's going to be a great new chapter. I'm just hoping that a lot of my friends who are Buffalo Bills fans don't get priced out of their own stadium.
Outdoor stadium?
As far as I'm aware, yes. I haven't seen anything that says that
Seems
it's not.
counterintuitive to me knowing Buffalo.
Yes, but they're a tough breed who like to put themselves through tables. So,
Like
an
like
open air
like
stadium
like the
wouldn't
Green
surprise
Bay
me,
like the Green Bay fans.
like the Green Bay fans.
Yeah.
They're another
She
breed.
says, "Nah, it's all good." Let's talk about summer sports. I'm getting frigid talking about winter sports. Let's talk about the Blue Jays. Um, so what's this about Alek Manoah? Dugout feeling weird? What?
Well, as I'm sure you know, he hasn't exactly been having the greatest of
Yikes.
seasons.
Nope.
It got off to a slow start. His control hasn't been there. His velocity hasn't been there. His confidence hasn't been there. So the Jays have basically optioned him down to the Florida Complex League, which is about as low as you can go. I think the idea here is to get him some more time on the mound, get him some more reps, um, let him beat up on lower caliber teams, for lack of a better term, to get his confidence back up before elevating him back up through the farm system, through Buffalo, to finally get him back to Toronto.
So essentially, they're treating him like a computer. They're hitting the reset switch.
Basically, they're looking to reboot him and to see what shakes loose. Yeah. I mean, it really
He needs
hasn't been a good
rebooting.
season.
He needs rebooting.
Yeah. He did
You know,
change some things in his mechanics in the off season. I know that there
you
was a
think
lot
that's
of,
the reason?
yeah, it's partially that. I think there's also a lot of distraction around his social media presence as well, because he has
It
gone out of his
started
way
it
to,
started it started early in the season. He had
yeah,
some other major leaguers that were going after him,
yeah,
and, basically, the implication was that he's a little too full of himself. Well,
yeah,
he has no reason to be now. If he was, he's not right now, and he seemed pretty humble to me in the last, uh, game, recap interview that he did post-game. He really sounded, dejected and understanding that he's not the player he thought he was, that he could be. And he also made it clear that he's tried everything. So it's no surprise that they're going this step, Aaron, because even he, through his own admission, has done everything he could, at least in his own mind, with this major league club. Sometimes we talk about sports being a mental game. There's a mental aspect. I think we're looking in a dictionary for the word affected mentally as an athlete. His pitcher's there. And I wish him the best of luck. We saw the same thing with the Hamilton Tiger Cat quarterback last year. And this is the same thing. You end up in a rut. It's really difficult, especially for a pitcher,
yeah.
a quarterback, those kinds of positions, goaltenders, all those are, you can really slip out of a groove and end up in the wrong groove real easily.
Yeah, on the flip side of this as well is Blue Jays pitcher Anthony Bass. He
Mm.
is not having a good time of it. Uh, his his ERA has been particularly horrible for the month of June. It seems almost a bit karmic, I guess, after the video that he shared and how he's been behaving, especially at the start of Pride Month. His ERA for the month of June sits at 18, which is never where you want to be if you're supposed to be a reliever.
Again, it's another one of those things where you're
Yeah,
not in the groove and then you end up in the wrong groove. It can take you for a ride. That third rail can be really tough. And sometimes you don't know that third rail is a third rail when you touch it. The shock is debilitating. And he's going through that right now. As a human being, I would say that he made a mistake. I think he knows he made a mistake, and to recover from it's going to be difficult, but he has to figure out a way, uh, A, to make it right, and B, to try to get past it. And hopefully people will understand that. I mean, this isn't the same thing that happened with Pilar, right? Pilar was even worse. Like it
yeah.
really got ugly with Pilar. Bass isn't getting it. It isn't hitting Bass as hard as I remember it hitting Pilar. I don't know what you think, but
Well, I mean, there were the whole issues that went down with Kevin Pillar, and also with Uniel Escobar, I think was the other player
yep,
that had
yep,
the slurs written on his eye black.
yeah.
So it catches up with you in different ways. On
Well,
the flip side, though, Kevin Gosman has been absolutely fantastic for the Blue Jays. So there's that bright light there.
they need
He
him.
pitched 7 innings, struck out 13, and kept the Astros off the board after allowing a leadoff home run on the second pitch of the game, which was rather unfortunate. But he currently leads in innings pitched uh, in FWAR. He's also second in strikeout percentage, strikes, baseball, balls, and FIP. So it's nice to see that he's set himself up well for success here. So he's
Yeah, there were
continuing to run the table.
concerns. There were concerns. He's washed them. The Jays. They've won quite a bit now in the in the recent history. So they've done a really good job of recovering. Let's go to Andescu. She lost to Ukraine Serenko.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. She was actually having a career best run at Roland Garros, but she was eliminated in straight sets 6-1, 6-1 on Saturday. It was a short match. It actually only took about 62 minutes. Andreescu won only 16 of 45 points while on serve, including just 38% of her first serve points, compared to 63% for Tsurenko, who dominated the match basically from start to finish. Andreescu also had 22 unforced errors and 3 double faults, which is, I mean, if you're going to have a game where you fall down, unfortunately, that's what you're looking at. It didn't end well for her, but her run up to that point was really good.
Shapovalov lost in the third round as well.
Yeah, he unfortunately lost to Alcaraz, who cruised to a 6-1, 6-4, 6-2 win. Um, it was a hard fought second set, to say the least. You can tell that by the 6-4 score. Um, but bookended by the fact that Alcaraz just stomped him 6-1 and 6-2.
Patrick Roy was thought to be a candidate for the head coaching job in New York. The Rangers, nope, not happening.
After picking up the coach that they did, I mean, there was hope there for him. Patrick Roy thought that after he won the Memorial Cup with the Quebec Rempart over the weekend, and given the fact that he had a 3-year stint with the Colorado Avalanche already, so he does know the NHL, and he does have a Jack Adams trophy to his credit for the 2013-2014 season. But Cronin was the guy that was hired in New York, so that puts him out of the running. The Calgary Flames are still kind of looking for a bench boss, and the Toronto Maple Leafs haven't really come out and said that they were keeping Keefe. And the goings on in Ottawa also are something that's brought into question. Uh, and while he hasn't had any real history with those particular franchises, having him behind the bench could be interesting. I mean, we've seen how it's worked when you put ex-NHLers behind the bench. You know what, with Marty St. Louis and with Rod Brindamore. Those are the two most notable examples right there of what can happen when you put former players behind the bench. I'm just not sure if he would work that well in Toronto.
There's a leadership skill there that you're talking about more, maybe even more than the technical skill. So a three-way trade, Ivan Provorov of the Flyers.
Yeah, this was an interesting one. I'm still trying to figure out what goes on here. But basically, from Philly to Columbus was Ivan Provorov. The Flyers got the 2023 22nd overall draft pick. The LA Kings 2024 second round draft pick. Columbus second round pick in 2024 or 2025. Cal Peterson, Sean Walker, and Helgi Grans. And the LA Kings get 30% retained salary on Provorov, Kenny Connaughton, and Hayden Hodgson. So there's a few players going back and forth in this whole thing here. So along with Babcock now and Provorov in Columbus, along with Johnny Gaudreau, Patrick Laine, Jack Roslovic, um, it's going to be a really interesting season. I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect to see Provorov in a three-way with two other guys. So, we'll go from there.
And we have with the Stanley Cup final, if it were happening right now in my imaginary world where Stanley Cup is going on, the Panthers, 7 penalties in their first game. That they didn't get 7 penalties the whole series against who they played before, Carolina.
Yeah. Well, the series was over so fast they didn't have time to get 7 penalties. Let's be honest here. But you look at the second game, and I think the penalty minutes were 84 to 54 in that particular game. There were a lot of misconducts that were handed out. And you know what?
After
On
the
top
whistle
of
stuff.
Yeah, well, and even with all the penalties that Matthew Tkachuk got, he still managed to play 18 minutes that night. So, you know, you, you got to kind of wonder what's going on here. Plus, the fact that Bobrovsky now doesn't seem to know which end of the stick to hold is a concern as well. I mean, if I want to know where this guy was when they were playing the Leafs, because damn, we could have used it.
Well, Aaron, I hate to say it, but the Leafs made him look as good as he was. They helped a lot. I mean, you can't hit too many posts, Anyway, The game is a game of inches, literally, sometimes even game of half inches. Speaking of the Maple Leafs, there's some question as to whether Sheldon Keefe. Listen, I've seen this movie so many times. I told you what was going to happen with Dubas. He was going to get a president's job. Guess what happened? He got a president's job.
Yep.
Here's what I'm going to tell you about Keefe. He's going to be the coach of the Maple Leafs next year because he's a tearaway. You know, the GM didn't hire him. He can keep him around while he checks out the players and the team and learns more about the organization. It doesn't matter to Shanahan whether this guy gets fired or not. So they're going to keep him another year, and I think he'll be a lame duck coach. And unfortunately, under lame duck coach comes a lack of real understanding what players play under the proper kind of pressure. So it's not a. I guess what I'm saying is not that he should get fired, but if they don't give him another year on his contract, then they're looking for trouble.
Here's what kills me, man. There have been something like 390 NHL coaches
Right.
over the course of the entire history. Keith's regular season's points percentage is .678. That ranks him ninth all time of any NHL coach with more than 200 games. And the only coach that can beat 607.678 is Tom Johnson, who actually led the Boston Bruins for 3 seasons during Bobby Orr's prime. So that's the comparison level that we're looking at here. You know, I mean, he's done absolutely fantastic with them.
He sure has.
He was 199, 89, and 31 with the Marlies. He was 98, 27, and 9 with the Sioux Greyhounds. This is a guy that knows how to coach, at least during the regular season. The playoffs are a completely different beast. It
It's the
requires slightly
players,
more
it's the type
flexibility.
of players you have. You can have a coach that can be very successful, and you know the Leafs have never been under his. I don't think they've ever played and not had the margin of play. I mean, every series they've lost when he was in it, they had the margin of play. They just some people call it goaltending. I call it inefficiency under pressure. That's what they suffer from. And enough there. Let's talk about Calgary. They've got a new arena. Good for them. The deal will include a 35-year commitment to stay. You know, that's good too.
Yep, it's a $1.2 billion deal, which is huge. That's almost as much as the Bills are playing for their new stadium. They're getting a new
But this
arena
is a
that will,
lot of buildings. An
yeah,
event area. So let's keep
yeah.
that in mind.
It comes with a 35-year lease that includes a commitment from the owners of the Flames to stay in the city. Um, the city of Calgary, the Alberta government, Calgary Sports and Entertainment Corporation, and the Calgary Stampede reached an agreement in principle in late April. The $1.2 billion price tag for the Event Center project includes $800 million for the new arena, in addition to parking, transit improvements, a new community rink, and an enclosed plaza. Uh, they're looking at about $515 million is what the city would contribute from their reserves, another $360 million from its working capital towards a long-term lease with CSEC. CSEC would pay $40 million up front and then $17 million, that's 17 million in lease payments, increasing by 1% each year for another $708 million over the course of the 35-year amortization of the plan. So they're looking at a revitalization of the downtown core. The province is also going to kick in about $30 million, to cover half of the costs of another 1,000 seat community rink, if its share is approved by the provincial cabinet and the Treasury Board before the end of the summer. So there you go.
And their future of naming rights and ticket taxes have been settled in the Calgary Arena deal, but talks will continue. Aaron, this was a riot. Thanks for doing this, buddy.
Hey, I appreciate it, Frank. It's always fun.
Okay, and by the way, this was a 1-hour Wednesday. We're losing our Fridays if you haven't heard yet, so we're here Mondays and Wednesdays. Mondays for a half hour, Wednesdays for an hour. So everybody, thank you for watching. For N. William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, airing Mondays and Wednesdays for now. Fridays will be back. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Also, check out Candid Frank Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.